A MAGA racist, bigoted Republican, evangelical, committed one of the most heinous murders probably in the history of a political motivated assassinations. Yet at the same time, the Republicans are trying to find a way to spin this and pin this on the Democrats instead of accepting the fact that one of their own is solely responsible for what occurred. Yesterday, a family awakened. There was no Father's Day celebration for them because their father and their mother were murdered. And you have one mega senator who decided to take it upon himself to make fun of this. Tyrone Bowman Live. Found out, and this is one of many videos I'm going to be making regarding this, because this is something that needs to be talked about and discussed. And the question is, why are the Republicans quick to denounce him when he has been a lifelong Republican and a MAGA supporter? So here it is, videos from Occupy Democrats. Check it out, listen to it, analyze it, see what you think about it.
The fallout from the murder of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband John, as well as the attempted assassination of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, continues, and one seriously dumb lawmaker has made the situation so much worse. Welcome to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. And thank you to all of you who protested with me over the weekend. Current estimates had the No King's Day protests pegged as the largest in American history, which is pretty amazing. That makes the killing of Representative Horman and her husband, as well as the shooting of Senator Hoffman, all the worse. On the upside, the suspect in the case, 57-year-old Vance Butler, is now in custody. Here's an update on the state of that case.
Police found the two cars. In one of the cars, three assault rifles. They found a list that included up to 70, or between 50 and 70 names and addresses of individuals, many of them politicians. Well, I heard from the roommate right outside his house.
I'll talk at the end of the video.
There were several news outlets. I had the opportunity to talk to him separately later, and he told me that he was a little frustrated that the suspect, that Belter, was identified, or that people were speculating online that he was a Democrat because of the leaflets that were found in one of those cars that read No Kings. Police have told CBS News that potentially he may have been expecting to target one of those protests that were set to happen on Saturday after the shooting, Saturday morning throughout Minneapolis, and they told people not to go. He told me that he was very conservative. He told me that he listened to InfoWars, the Alex Jones podcasts and TV shows or online shows. Here's a little bit more of what he told us yesterday in his house.
I was a Trump supporter. Voted for Trump. You like Trump? I like Trump.
It's not magic, it's math. If you don't hit at least 4 numbers.
Before I show the rest of the video, let me make something perfectly clear. None of this is personal with me. And anybody has a right to belong to any political party that they choose to, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, or Independent. You vote your conscience. You can vote whatever you want, who or what you ever want to vote for. So let's get that straight from the rip. And also, when something like this magnitude occurs and something like this happens, this is not a time for political football to try to score points. If one of your own did this, accept the fact that he was a MAGA Republican. That's the bottom line. Let's get back to the story.
He told me that Belter would have been offended if anybody called him a Democrat. He had served on some state boards appointed by two governors, the latest being Governor Tim Walz, and that's why people perhaps speculated that he worked for Walz, but that was not the case. He served on these bipartisan boards.
It's important to note there that the facts, including words from Bolter's roommate, dispel the notion that Tim Walz had anything to do with the shootings.
Hold on, we
An
missed
idea
something
that
here.
has made the rounds on
Let's go
To
back.
InfoWars, the Alex Jones podcast.
All right. Could
Have
we-
been expecting to target one of those protests that were set to happen on Saturday after the shooting, Saturday morning throughout Minneapolis, and they told people not to go. He told me that he was very conservative. He told me that he listened to InfoWars, the Alex Jones podcasts and TV shows or online shows. Here's a little bit more of what he told us yesterday in his house.
I was a Trump supporter. Voted for Trump. You like Trump? I like Trump.
He told me that that Belter would have been offended if anybody called him a Democrat. He had served on some state boards appointed by two governors, the latest being Governor Tim Walz, and that's why people perhaps speculated that he worked for Walz, but that was not the case. He served on these bipartisan boards.
It's important to note there that the facts, including words from Bolter's roommate, dispel the notion that Tim Walz had anything to do with the shootings, an idea that has made the rounds on right-wing social media. Go figure, right? That includes Utah Senator Mike Lee, who posted a series of tweets like this one, alleging that Tim Walz was somehow orchestrating the shootings and denying that Vance Bolter had any love or affiliation with Donald Trump. This man was a Trump supporter through and through, and a simple examination of his targets, which included Walz himself, U.S. Representatives Kelly Morrison and Ilhan Omar, as well as Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, reveal he was politically motivated against Democrats and progressives. Though no King's Rally flyers were found in his car, that suggests he may have targeted the rallies or placed them there in anticipation of needing political cover. The same thing happened back in 1972 after Arthur Bremer shot Governor George Wallace. Richard Nixon personally dispatched his aides Howard Hunt and Charles Colson to plant campaign literature for George McGovern in Bremer's apartment to change public perception of Bremer's political leanings. But I digress again. Regarding the arrest of Bolter and these heinous attacks, Senator Amy Klobuchar stopped by Morning Joe this morning to discuss Bolter's alleged motives, Lee's tweets, and Donald Trump's role in all of this. Now, this is a longer clip, but there's a lot here to digest, so make sure to watch the whole thing.
When I was chair of the Rules Committee, I worked really hard to get more security for members' homes and offices. And that is because of the facts. 2016, there were about 1,700 threats against members of Congress. Now, in the last year of 2024, there were over 9,000 threats. You're seeing the same in the judiciary with judges appointed by both Republican and Democratic presidents and governors. You're seeing the same thing with election judges. People are reading things online. This is just my view. This is a lot of it. Look at the unbalanced sick man who bludgeoned Speaker Pelosi's husband. They read things online, they believe them, they start acting them out, they already are imbalanced themselves, and they actually go do what they're reading online. So that has been a contributor, as well as, of course, a lot of hateful rhetoric, and there's a lot of politicians that should be looking in the mirror and bring their rhetoric down.
Well, one politician, and I will say a man that I've known and in the past have had a good relationship and liked him, like a soft-spoken man, but somebody that posted this weekend, Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah, obviously facing strong criticism for a social media post about the Minnesota shooting suspect. Yesterday, Lee posted a picture of the suspect at the door of one of the lawmakers with the caption, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." It is a pinned tweet at the top of his page. 25 minutes later, the senator posted another picture of the suspected shooter with the caption, "Nightmare on Wall Street," mocking, of course, the situation with the name of...
Are you getting the runaround from workers' comp after your work injury?
Later, the senator posted another picture of the suspected shooter with the caption, "Nightmare on Wall Street," mocking, of course, the situation with the name of the Minnesota governor. Both of those posts came hours before Lee tweeted a Happy Father's Day message. Conservative journalist Brad Palumbo responded to one of the posts writing, quote, "What the hell is Mike Lee doing? Has he completely lost it?" Meanwhile, contributing editor for The Atlantic, Norm Ornstein wrote, "Even for Mike Lee, this is beyond disgusting, disinformation beneath contempt." We're used to, Senator, we're used to wackos on the extremes on both sides, posting bizarre things on social media. What happens when it's mainstreamed by a senator, again, a guy that I've known and who used to try to be a thoughtful, conservative voice for small government conservatism, when he starts posting things like this? And what's the United States Senate's answer to that? I only ask that because I can tell you, back in my days, I guess in the Stone Age it is now, I mean, a senator on either side would have been roundly condemned by members of his or her own party if they had done this.
I have condemned what Mike Lee did here at home, and I will speak to him about this when I return. And what I'm going to tell him is, this isn't funny what happened here. This was an incredible woman, her husband, her 2 kids yesterday on Father's Day. There was no Father's Day for them. They lost both their parents. I'll tell him about the law enforcement that did incredible work here. We had a 43-hour manhunt, the biggest manhunt in Minnesota's history, hundreds and hundreds of officers, 20 SWAT teams, going door to door to door, citizens on edge, hiding in their homes. And they finally were able to arrest this man who was armed, but there was not a shooting, and bring him into custody, and did their jobs. And by the way, if the police had not on their own decided to go over to Representative Hortman's home without a call because of what they noticed, of course, had happened, the tragedy at Senator Hoffman's house, they thought, well, maybe we should check this out. Well, they weren't able to prevent the deaths. They were able to identify the suspect because he ran out and his car was left there. Otherwise, more people would have been killed. So that's what I'm going to tell Senator Lee when I get back to Washington today, because this is not a laughing matter. And certainly what we're seeing in increasing violence, and this evil man who did this is not a joke.
You know, I really hope cameras do capture that exchange between Klobuchar and Lee. I'm sure that would be something to watch. In the same broadcast as the clip we just showed, Joe Scarborough went on to note that the shootings of Hortman, Hoffman, and their spouses is part of a larger pattern of violence from MAGA supporters. He noted the attack on Paul Pelosi several years ago by a MAGA conspiracy theorist. Add to that the attempted attack on Josh Shapiro, the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and her family, or, for that matter, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump by one of his own supporters last year. Trump derangement syndrome is real, though it's not an affliction of Democrats furious over Trump's actions. It's a contagious madness spreading among Trump supporters that embolden and derange them to the point that they think political murders are justified. Look, we saw the same kind of derangement among former Confederates, which culminated in the murder of President Lincoln. And is it too much to wonder if it's just a coincidence that Trump supporters also defend the Confederate flag or want to restore Confederate names and monuments? I'm just asking. But here's the bigger question. When will Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and MAGA lunatics own up to their encouraging violence? These people called in Marines to defend against peaceful protesters, but can't condemn violence by their own supporters? This is where we are, America. Trump derangement is real, and it's spreading rapidly to encourage violence among his supporters, even as the man tries to gut programs that support the states he carried in his election, and even as he launches one grift after the next. That's the real insanity here, that anyone would stand by this disgusting man at this point, let alone commit violence in his name. Republicans, it's time to wake up. Stop the lunatics from running the asylum, lest you end up there lobotomized yourself. Then again, looking around, maybe that's already happened. This is Occupy Democrats.
Hey guys, this is U.S. Senator John Ossoff in Georgia.
Well, it appears and it seems that there's a lot going on in the name of whatever extremist views that people have. And unfortunately, you have people who are going to sit back and they're going to continue to play the blame card. because they don't want to accept responsibility. You know, I found a video about this now arrested murderer, MAGA Republican. I guess he was calling himself being a preacher at that time. He was anti-everything. I'll bring it to you shortly. Never surrender. Never quit.